So today we are very honored to welcome Miss Beckner, which is a communication lecturer here in the civil engineering department. So Miss Beckner is from West Virginia. She got a bachelor degree at the University of West Virginia in communication and got an MBA at the same school. She resides in Central, in South Carolina, with her husband, 2 daughters, and 2 dogs. I love dogs too. Also, Ms. Beckner relates to words and people more than numbers and enthusiastically learns about the fascinating world of civil engineering. Welcome to the world of civil engineering, Ms. Beckner. So I hope today everybody will learn from her as I did last semester. So I will let you go for Ms. Beckner.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You passed.
He did. He did a great job. Well, I'm so glad that I was a big help to you, and I hope that I can be to others today. I really am fascinated by the world of civil engineering and the importance it plays in our society, and I am very passionate about communication, and so I hope to help our engineers become stronger communicators, especially in today's world, which is TikTok dominated. It is driven by social media and little sound bites and clips, and people need to be able to share information that's accurate and engaging in a very concise way. So, oh, my computer is not working. Can you advance for me, Magda?
Yeah, sure.
I'm sorry.
No, that's okay.
It's not working. Of course, this is what you don't want to do.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, so we're just gonna quickly talk about our agenda, and we're gonna start off with doing a little exercise in a moment, and then I want to talk about your target audience, which is what your first concern should be as you're preparing for any kind of communication. And then we're going to talk about public speaking, and then what strong presentations look like, posters and writing, and then I'll just kind of summarize and answer any questions that everybody might have. Okay, next slide. Thank you. This is just a quick quote. And I understand that maybe Dr. Chowdhury can tell us a little bit more. He studies engineering failures, and so he understood the importance that communication plays to civil engineering. And it's a key aspect to bringing your project to life. Okay, next slide. Sorry. Okay. So as we probably all know, social media is growing rapidly, and we now have almost 5 billion social media users in the world using it daily, and it has grown by almost 10% from the last year. It has become a primary method for communicating. Well, I should just say sharing information. Communicating doesn't always mean that we're connecting, and that's what part of that needs to happen in our communication. Okay, next slide. So you can see here that over the last 2 years, the use of social media and the different formats of platforms have grown. YouTube, still predominantly a heavily used social media platform, but you can see where TikTok has come up and pretty much just slightly taken over Instagram. And a point I'd like to make on that is that, excuse me, in the last, actually yesterday, Monday, the Texas A&M University professor of physics, Tatiana Yurkmova, she's one of the stars of the ATM, Texas A&M physics department TikTok page that has 1.5 million followers. And she shares, and some of her colleagues have like literally little 1-minute videos to share physics theories and practices with her class, with a wider audience. And literally the NPR did a story on her on Monday. This just shows the power that social media has to share our scientific information. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, now for a little exercise. So I hope those of you who are joining us virtually will also participate. But those of you who are in the room, if you have something you can take notes on, that would be great. If not, just think about it. But I want you to participate in this challenge, and I want you to think about synthesizing your research, your work. So we usually start with you writing an essay, you're writing your dissertation, you're writing a paper, right? It's many pages long. We want to boil it down to then a elevator speech. Who can tell me how long an elevator speech usually is?
30 seconds.
30 seconds, yeah, maybe a minute. I'll give you up to a minute. So then you would take that elevator speech and I want you to get it down to a tweet, right? Like that's, what do they give you now? 280, I think they give you a little bit more, but 280 characters. And finally, a billboard. So when we're driving in our car, we have about 5 to 10 seconds as we're passing the billboard on the road to be able to read what it says. So you have to get about 5-10 words max on that billboard to get your message across to the viewer. So if you had to have a billboard and 5 to 10 words, what could you say about your research? Take a few seconds and think about that. Can you get it down to a few words?
You can try.
You can try.
Yeah, protecting infrastructures from hardware and software security challenges.
I love that. Yeah, that's good. And it's to the point and it's clear.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's your research. How about all of theirs?
I would try mine.
Oh.
Okay, mine. Standard scope of services for transport infrastructure projects.
Okay. What does the first part of that? Can you be a little bit more precise?
Like a standard scope template.
Okay.
Standard scope template for transport infrastructure projects.
Okay. Okay. Good job. Anybody else?
We have one from the chat. She says, if we know you, we can help you.
If we know you, we can help you.
Who is that?
That's interesting.
Does that have more meaning for you guys? If we know you, we can help you.
Who is that?
Maybe. Yeah. From a lawyer company or something.
Oh, yeah.
Maybe we can talk to lawyers.
Yeah. Do you guys have any that you want to
I
share?
have something.
Rachelle?
Fairness and equity in civil engineering with artificial intelligence.
Let me see.
Fairness and equity
Oh, yeah, fairness and equity, yeah.
in civil engineering with artificial intelligence.
That's good. Yeah,
But if it will be on a board, right? So, but isn't it like, so it has a much more simpler, right? Like, so exit 2 miles ahead. So it will be this simple,
simple,
everyone can understand,
Right.
right? Like if you see on a sign. Yeah.
precise, and
Exit.
remember, and we'll talk about this in a little bit, where billboards always have a visual
Yeah.
with it. So you would even be able to put a visual with that to illustrate what does that AI mean in terms of fairness and equity.
Making rural transport safer and more efficient.
Mm-hmm. That's good. So you get the point. You want to be as precise and concise as you can be, and think about, what if I just have a few seconds to share with somebody and boil it down and get the essence of what I'm working on to my listener or my reader, what would I say about that? Okay, excuse me, next slide. Okay, So people in the department here constantly hear me say precise and concise. That's my catchphrase. And I tell our students that you need to be as precise in your language as you are in your numbers. I know that you all are very precise with your numbers, so thinking about how can your words match that precision. And just like we did with our exercise, how can we boil down maybe what we've written from our essay, or even taking our first draft and getting that boiled down to something that's even more concise. And the first thing that we want to do is identify our target audience, and then what is the best way to reach that target audience. So who are we wanting to talk to, and then where are they? So how can we best find them? Next. Okay. So target audience, that can be different people in the same room. Even like right now, we have different levels of technical expertise. You all are very technical, and I am not a civil engineer and don't have that technical expertise. We have students of varying backgrounds. We have people from different states, different cultures. What do we know about the people who we're presenting to, and how can I best relate to them? So, for example, in one of our classes that we're talking about now, they are going to pretend to present to Clemson City Council. And we talked about, well, what does that body of people look like? There's not one engineer, there's nobody with any technical experience on that council. They're bankers, they're parks and recreation managers, real estate professionals. There's nobody with any kind of engineering information. And so presenting a very detailed technical brief to them wouldn't land well. We have to bring it down to, as Jean-Michel, I loved his example earlier, how can I communicate this to a 9-year-old? How can I, or a high schooler, how can I get, I often say to the students, talk to me like I'm your mom. Explain it to me. If you can explain it to your mom and you can explain it to me, then you're doing well. And I can understand you, then you're doing well. Maybe your moms are engineers. My mom is not an engineer. So talk to me like somebody who doesn't have any technical background. And then where are they? So like we said earlier, TikTok is a huge platform for the younger audience. YouTube, lots of people are on YouTube. How many of people in the room are on LinkedIn? Yay, good job. Okay. Everybody should be using LinkedIn to build your professional career and sharing your research and your work experiences and everything that you're going on and following that up. In a conference, you guys are you're going to have, again, a wide variety of people. So you're always going to be able to talk to the person who has the most technical knowledge in the room, but you're not going to be able to reach the person who doesn't have any. So what my recommendation is to reach the common denominator, and the person who, again, if you can talk to your mom, you can talk to the 9-year-old, that person, everybody else in the room is going to understand too. Then when Dr. Chowdhury wants to come up and engage with you in a very technical conversation, he's going to really dive in and get into those details with you, and you can have your papers and your information with all of those details available to your more technical audience.
I have a comment here. So
Yeah.
sometimes I had a very famous quote that if you cannot explain something to a 9-year-old, then you don't understand it yourself. So if you're, so that's also shows lack of understanding. Yeah, then you can just try to add some complex words to divert. Right? So
Yeah.
that's also
Exactly. Yes, and that means you understand it very well if you can share it and teach it to somebody
and
else.
then you understand very well.
Yes, that shows your level of expertise. Okay. Okay. So this visual that I'm sharing is a example of we really gain the most by witnessing or experiencing it. And so it's not always possible, but if you can, and you're presentations, how can you demonstrate something? Or have an activity like what I just did with you? I think that will be something that you will remember and take away with you, and it'll be, oh, what's my headline? How can I get this down to my headline? So how can you share something that you have your audience participate in, and 80% of they will retain 80% of that. We only obtain 10% of what we hear. So thinking about how you can incorporate more experiences into your presentations will help your audience to retain your information. Okay, next slide. Thank you. Okay, now public speaking. Jean-Michel had me in class and we did a little bit of that. And we are fortunate here. I want to just offer to you all, we have a software that we use called Pitch Vantage. And if you haven't used it or don't have access to it yet, please let me know if you would like it and we can get it for you. I think that some students are really finding it a valuable tool to record themselves giving their speeches and being able to watch the video playback and see the computer give it a score, give yourself a score on your eye contact, how well you project, are you varying your pitch, are you enunciating well, are you using hand movements? It will evaluate you on all of those and you can see you progress as you practice. Okay. Next
So
slide.
that you got non-verbal expressions. I tell my students that what you're not saying is as important as what you are
Yes, yes,
saying. Yeah. So non-verbal is very important.
yes. Right. And they should match, your nonverbal cues should match what's coming out of your, yeah. So public speaking, right? We always want to bring the energy. Well, we want to match our energy to what we're presenting. We don't want to have a mismatch between our nonverbal and our verbal communication. I think that the best presentations are when you can tell a story and have a very strong opening that your ending ties back to your beginning. If you come out with your thesis and you say this is what, and then you're tying your summary back to the beginning of your presentation, you have made a full circle and you have just put a nice little package together for your audience. The more you know your material, which I know you all do because you're intimately working with this research that you're doing, the more confident you're going to be. And then that is going to come out in your presentation. So that's half the battle right there. It's just you guys know what you're working on and don't maybe confidently speak about it. Then it's just a matter of you getting the practice of speaking in front of people or using the Pitch Vantage tool to practice your presentation. The more conversational that you can be in your language, again, the more the audience is going to relate to you.
I just want sorry.
Go ahead.
About the confidence, you mentioned that you know your topic very well, then you can portray the confidence. But I see in some presentation, say someone know like 9 things, but they may not know 2 of the things, but they still add that in the slide. And that's very bad. Don't show anything in the slide unless you know it very well. So I tell that to the students. You may have less words, but just say what you exactly know and you have confidence in them, right?
Yes.
This confidence shows when you talk. So.
Right. Right. And yes, so yeah, knowing your material very well and sticking to what you know.
Otherwise, don't talk about it.
Yeah. Yes. Okay, next slide. Okay. I'm gonna again ask the people in the room if they would, the audience would participate. This is what I have all of my classes do because it is very natural for everybody to get nervous when you're speaking. Even in this presentation today, I have nerves, and that is normal. That's the human response. That's what we're supposed to do.
Yeah.
So it causes your body it causes your heart rate and your blood pressure to go up. And so we have to combat those things so that we can calm our nerves and give the best presentation. And so you all would please consider standing. What I have students do, and I get, is to stretch and elongate your body as much as you can, because we are stretching out. We do this and we're doing this, and now we're stretching out our body so our lungs have capacity. You can put your hands down. Now we have capacity to get more breath into our lungs, and we're going to take deep breaths from our belly, not our chest. And so we're going to I make students do that before every presentation. And if I have students that are really nervous, I say, take a little stroll down the hallway and work out some of that energy. And the other thing that I do is tell students to squeeze their body, squeeze their fists into as tight as of a ball as they can, and then release and feel the tension releasing their arms. Whatever you can do to release that tension, what you need to find what works for you and practice that and make that your thing that you do before you present. And then I'm just going to, again, practice, practice, practice. Please do not think that you're going to, that you know your material so well that you can just get up that morning and just wing it and you're going to do a great job, because that doesn't usually go very well.
So I just want to add something. I'm teaching a class traffic. I'm teaching this for the last 17, 18 years. So I know the material very well, but before each class, every year, I go through the material again and I do every problem again. So just, you don't know what this practice gives me a lot of confidence in the classroom. So I go through the entire thing again, spending hours on all notes, right? So that I can be more fluent.
Refreshing your memory.
Refreshing, and I can be more confident.
And maybe even making little tweaks.
Yeah. I think that helps. So I attest to that. That
Yeah.
practice is very important. Yeah.
Yes.
I just wing it, so. Not sure.
And the role of appropriate attire.
Talia, okay, do you know who the number 13 is?
Someone like-
Brock Purdy, 49er, Super Bowl.
No.
Okay.
Okay, next slide. Okay. So public speaking do's and don'ts. Dr. Fabry said this earlier. We want to not put a bunch of stuff on, and we're going to actually do the opposite of what I put on the slide, because there's even a little bit too many words on this slide for me. So we were going to limit what we're saying. Remember, we aren't trying to say everything. We can't say everything to everyone all the time. So what are your key elements that you have to communicate to this group at this time? I don't have to tell you everything. I just have to tell you enough to get you excited, and then we're going to continue a conversation. We're going to email each other. We're going to connect on LinkedIn. We're just sharing a little bit of what we're doing right now to see how we can connect. We're always orally citing our sources, and we are always using crisp visuals. And I'm sure that you all know this and you all know this at home, but your visuals should match your content. We have some students who just think, well, I'll just throw up any photo up here, like of something on campus, and it's like, that has nothing to do with what you're talking about on this slide. So they need to complement each other. We don't want to ignore our audience and the time constraints that we were given. And sometimes some of our engineering students or our undergrad students will think that 5 minutes, that is not long enough for me to talk about my design. How am I supposed to do that in 5 minutes? And we're a whole team. And we say, Clemson Facilities gives professional firms 5 minutes to come in and give their pitch to the Board of Trustees to get a multi-million-dollar job. So if they can do it in 5 minutes, you can do it in 5 minutes. And that's reality. You're going to maybe sometimes only be given 5 minutes. You're at a conference and you're one of many, many speakers. They're giving you 10, 15 minutes. You need to respect everybody's time and stay within that time. Okay, next slide. Thank you. Okay, next slide. So again, we want to limit how much text we have. We want to make them visual. How can we make them interesting? The number one point that I hope everybody can take away from this slide is proofread. That's with everything, with your slides, with your papers, is we're not talking about cheating, but we want somebody to give a professional overview of our work and make sure that, because Grammarly and Word are great, they have, the lines will pop up saying, but you can spell a word correctly and it's the wrong word for that sentence and it doesn't make sense in that sentence and it's not going to catch that. But somebody reading it will catch that if you can give it to somebody else to look over, a classmate, a professor, and say, can you just does this make sense to you? Number one on a visual part that it really is a no-no that I want everybody to avoid is doing dark backgrounds with light font. So like using black or dark blue, purple, and then putting white. That is very hard on especially old eyes. It's hard, that's the most difficult format for anybody to read. And so you want to always try to use the light colored background and just plain black or gray fonts. And then again, we're not overloading our audience with a lot of information. You shouldn't have 100 slides for a 15-minute presentation. So limiting how many you're going to have and what is the key information that I need to put on each of these slides.
Unless you talk fast, like,
That's exactly, it's so true, like, yeah, I'm learning, but that's what I found too in my experience.
Because the temptation, if you have 100 slides, now I'm tempted to go through 100 slides and tell you everything that's on my 100 slides. And now I'm talking really, really, really fast in a 15-minute presentation. And the audience, what did my previous slides say? What's the percentage of what we retain that we hear? 10%. And if I am talking that fast, you are not retaining anything of what I'm saying.
Yeah, so in the conference, I see some professors have so many equations in the slide. No one reads them. It's not possible to understand them. So, and as you mentioned, there's a lot of the information you can find later in the paper through a follow-up email. So why you have to present everything there? We know that you know math, so just do it. So, yeah.
Thank you. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. We know you know how to do your job. Just
So, but
tell us what you learned.
Impress us. Yeah.
Yes, exactly.
Very simple and and they can communicate with you later if they have some detailed questions. They look at your paper and so on.
Yes, correct. Okay, next slide. Thank you. Speaking of communicating later, so I have not used any fancy PowerPoint presentations or Slido or Prezi, but there are presentations that will really wow and zip and zoom and do all these great things. And Canva and Infogram are great for taking your data and putting it in a very visually interesting graphic that you can use. Same thing with Plotly. We have access to Adobe Creative Suite here on campus. These are all tools that you can use to take your data and back to the storytelling. How can you visually present your data that tells a story about how we're going to make the roads safer or how we're protecting roads from cybersecurity issues? Like, how can you visually portray that through this? So why do you think I have the QR code up there? Those of us in the room, or anybody online if they want to type in.
Is there any comment from the online audience?
Not yet. So you can directly take you to whatever the link.
So this doesn't take us to anything, but yes, so I can use a QR code to link to a video that I've created, and we've done that for conference posters, to the paper that I've written on my research, and I don't have to put all my equations and everything up on my PowerPoint because now I've got a QR code that you all can scan at the end of it, and now you've got my paper and there's all of my work.
Yeah.
And I'm not tempted to share everything in this little presentation. Right. That is a quick, easy way for you to share lots of things, or to take a survey and get people's information who are interested in connecting with you. You know, you can put a question up there if you're interested in talking about whatever your topic is, have them complete that. I really, really strongly recommend using it in PowerPoint or in your presentations and on posters, and thinking about how you can have a more dynamic, interactive component to reaching your audience. Okay, thank you. Okay, posters. So this is where I hope that I'm gonna have an impact in really changing the world of science and how we're communicating at conferences. Because I really do not like seeing a research paper just thrown up on a poster up on the wall. It is not engaging, and oftentimes students throw so much information and the words are teeny tiny, tiny, tiny. And so back to our previous slide, beginning of this, that's a billboard. Your poster is your billboard. And we're all in these huge conference halls, right? Like huge exhibit hall, and there's hundreds of people walking through here. And if they're just tiny, tiny words on a piece of paper on the wall, am I reading that as I'm walking by? No. If there's a headline and a really engaging graphic that has bright colors, and I'm like, wow, what's that? Now I'm going, and it's something that's 5 to 10 words that I can, oh, I want to know about roads and safety. I'm going to go over and talk to John Michelle. So now the point of the poster is to get me, the audience member, to come talk to you, because we're supposed to be making a connection and building networks and doing research together. But I can't connect with you if I can't get you out of the stream of people walking in the middle of the aisle to come over and talk to me. So that has to attract my attention. So how can you attract the attention of your audience? Okay, that's one example from a conference we went to in fall of redesigning engineering departments like what we've done here at Clemson. Next slide. Okay, same conference, same different poster. This is a little busier than the last one, and maybe has a little bit too small words in some of the areas, but there's a big headline, there's people engaging, and so they're telling a story, right? And when we're telling a story, we're still thinking about how we're mapping out our content and how it makes sense. And we read from left to right and top to bottom, and so our information should flow that way. So that when somebody's coming along, it's just like reading a book, and that makes sense to them. Okay, next slide. Okay, same thing. We want a clear headline that's going to grab. So think about your headline you had earlier. We got it down to a few words. Maybe we can play around with it a little bit more and be a little bit more precise and engaging, how we can change a few words out so it's more engaging. We always want to use active voice and present tense. You can maybe have some alliteration and play on words, depending on how, I don't know, different you want to be. I don't want to use the wrong word, but we always want to be concise and precise and accurate.
So in the presentation or poster, I asked my students to avoid adding any cartoons, because I think people may not take it seriously if it's a cartoon, it's not real. So I just have that impression that don't use any cartoon in any slides. or poster.
Okay. I understand that.
That's just,
And I've got some example. This is more of a cartoon,
Yeah.
and I have some that don't
Yeah.
have that, but yes. Next slide. So here's a different one that has a little bit more of, and maybe you still think that it's a little cartoon.
Yeah.
It is a little bit more of a traditional poster that we would see. You see they've used a QR code on their poster. But the point is, they're not trying to shove everything onto that one little poster. And also you can see the logos on the bottom there. Again, our partnerships are very important, and we want to recognize all of our partners, especially when we have grants like NSF and all. But that's not the eye-catching thing that we want. That should just be a small component recognized on a corner of a poster, not the headliner. And we want to use our white space and we want to tell a visual story. And so how can you do that using high quality graphics that aren't, they're going to meet everybody's needs and not be cartoonish? Okay, next slide. Again, proofread, proofread, proofread. So this poster, I would say, is again probably more of the traditional poster sense, but I like it, excuse me, in that it is broken down into smaller components, and it's still, we're not shoving all these words, we're not covering every inch of white space on the poster. It's not overwhelming for the reader. There's still a good headline at the top that's telling the audience what you're doing, and I'm going to decide whether I want to come over and talk to you because I'm working on that or I'm interested in that. I can see that from afar. Okay, thank you. Next slide. Okay. Writing, everybody's favorite subject. How many of you love writing? You do? Really? Good. I never get anybody that says they love writing. I do too. So my first piece of advice to you is to be a good writer, you have to be a good reader. And if you're not reading, and I don't just mean articles and journals and science paper, I mean, what are you reading for fun? Do you have a novel that you're reading? Are you reading the news? How are you taking in different information and seeing how people put information together? That will help you to become a better writer. So that's my first piece of advice. Next slide.
Would
Okay.
listening to audiobook count?
Yes, yes,
Okay.
yeah.
Is looking at pictures?
No. So this is a point of contention sometimes, controversy in science, but active voice is preferred because it makes for more precise and concise language. When we try to write in passive voice, then we're oftentimes writing around the subject and we come up with these very convoluted sentence structures or big chunks of copy. And so again, let's go back to the visual and thinking about the eyes and what we're retaining. And it's hard to look at a huge chunk of copy and not be overwhelmed by that. And so it needs to be broken down into paragraphs. I see that problem a lot with student writers, that they're not using paragraphs correctly, that we're lumping a lot of information together that doesn't all belong together. So thinking about that, and again, it goes back to having somebody proofread and read your documents and see, does it make sense? Is this word correct? Is it flowing well? Does it have energy to it? Are you varying your sentence structure? Avoid jargon if you can. And acronyms, you should always, even when you're talking to somebody in an audience at a conference, you should always say what it is first and then put the acronym in parentheses after. I can guarantee you there's going to be somebody in the audience like me that does not know what that acronym stands for, and we need the context. And there are acronyms, there's acronyms that the same acronym that can mean different things for different organizations and different industries. And so we always need that context. We always want to write in a professional tone. And the other thing I would say on this slide is if we're doing precise and concise, then it's really hard for us to use empty language. And those are words that don't really have any meaning, like very. It doesn't add value to what you're saying, or things, or items, or, I mean, there's students will throw in stuff like that. I hear that in presentations a lot. That's not precise. It's definitely not scientific. And so what is it exactly that you mean? And if you're saying very, then there's an extremity of that word. So if I'm very happy, that I'm joyful. If I'm very sad, I'm morose. Like there's definitely another word that you can use in place of the 3 or 4 that you've got there.
What absolutes mean?
Absolutes. So we don't want to say every or all or anything that is an absolute that would a lawyer grab onto and say, oh, well, you said you checked all of the samples and there was no whatever we were looking for. Now we have assumed a liability that we didn't intend to just because we put a word in there. So that we want to avoid that kind of language. Yes, and then the other thing, avoid using large figures in your narrative. So use approximate numbers, about, approximately 20 feet, approximately $9.5 million. And then if you want to break it down, like the budget, then it should be in a budget or in your chart. Those large data numbers should be in your graphics, not in your narrative, to that level of detail. Okay.
One thing I noticed for the students, they write, if I ask them to write a paper, start a paper, they don't actually know what they're trying to convey or communicate. So before they start writing, I think they need to know what they're trying to convey.
Exactly. And that just brought up a point, and I'm going to add this because I didn't have that in my presentation. Thank you very much. So 4 questions that you should think about before you start writing. And that goes back to our very beginning of target audience. So who am I talking to? What do they need to know? What are they going to do with this information? Like, are they making a decision? And then when? When are they using this? And that should help you to determine what information needs to go in this document. And yes, so there should always be a pre-writing exercise where you don't nobody just sits down and starts writing. You have to think about, who am I talking to? What do they need to know? What are they going to do with this information? Again, I need to avoid absolutes? Is a lawyer going to get a hold of this? So what am I writing? To whom? When is it due? What are they going to do with it? And then an outline is even better. Just even little bullet points of, with 1 or 2 words, and you talk about this and this and this. That gives you structure and helps your mind to focus on what you need to put in each of those bullet points.
Yeah, outline is critical. So before you start writing, the outline.
Yes, and that helps you organize your thoughts and it comes across on the page better. Okay. I think we're near the end. Yep, great. So to summarize, you all know your content the best. And so the way to build your confidence is to practice. And the other tidbit that I would give is remember that when you've practiced and you know what you want to say, and maybe you left off a piece of information, but the audience doesn't know that you were going to say that or you meant to say that. So nobody really knows or thinks, oh, they screwed up. No, just keep on going and do not let yourself be bothered with that. You can convey that information later if you need to. Think about who your audience is, what do you want them to know, and what are they going to do with it? And again, I would just say precise and concise and thinking about how you're getting to that headline. So my last one. There's some of my additional sources. And if anybody wants to talk to me, I am welcome. You can connect with me on LinkedIn. Any questions from anybody or comments?
I have a question about the dark and light background. Like I see many times we use the dark mode to use the software, and I know I'm going to use that one wrong time. And I saw like many students when they use like some character design software, they put the dark mode, like prefer to work in the dark background. It's less intense, like.
Yeah, somebody said that Keystone that hurts your eyes less.
Yeah, like when it's light, like so, like the point you mentioned that you said like the dark ones are light, so like it's kind of like.
Yeah, I was surprised to have a student say that to me last week, actually. And we always have them change it from the dark to the white background before they present it on PowerPoint. So from CAD. Yeah,
But now I'm saying like, you mentioned that it's hard, the dark one, but usually
For
like
reading.
what I'm saying, like people normally now, like even many softwares, even people they are using the dark mode to actually put less pressure on eyes, so it feels a bit contradictory. Yes,
for the map, you're saying it's better to
no,
have a
not
dark.
just map, and that's an example.
Browser, email.
Even browser,
Oh,
email,
really?
even PDF, yeah.
Yeah.
And it's kind of like, they are adding it with the newer update. It feels like people are like they're going to us.
I'll
like,
have to check
oh my
on that
God,
because I've always read and been told it's harder for people to read the lighter copy on the dark background.
I feel like
Yeah.
for presentations, like, people like sitting in the back, it's harder to read the lighter. But like, I guess in working on it, it makes sense, like, if it's just like you seeing your computer.
Like, even these like the
Yeah.
informatics, like it has the dark.
Mhm.
And like, when they like, just sitting sometimes in the back classrooms, and they use like the dark with the light, like over time, like continually looking at it, like the screen especially, like, it gets like more hazy, I guess. But that's not a great way to start.
But my experience, lighter background is better. So I did a presentation to the board of trustees, so before I had a darker background, then we changed to lighter. It just changed drastically, it was more effective, so I think that.
Images and like, show up on it.
It's, yeah. I will check on that and yes, and sometimes we are more about, design and things looking nice than we are visibility and readability, but I would always caution for readability first. Especially if you're doing words
If
on it.
nothing else, contrast is super important because we see like yellow on white and, for like some, but can't even
You
read.
can't,
Yeah.
How do you even read, it's,
or even that light lime green, like you, yeah, contrast is key.
Then my sister on the online audience.
Yes, so we have a question. So let's assume somebody gets a cold feet, sudden pause or goes blank in the middle of a presentation, despite being well prepared for the speech. How should one tackle the situation?
Note cards.
Note cards, very.
It's
Yes.
okay to have note cards and write down your bullet points and have them sitting to the side and not reading off of them. And that is a stress response. And again, I think that the more a person can practice and you can use those tools to help calm, because that is a physiological response in the body to the nerves. And so you got to control that first, but definitely note cards.
Sure. Yeah, that's a good pointer. Could you also please talk about some of the most common red flag words in scientific journal paper writing?
Oh,
inside of the paper itself. Like, Yeah, see, I
I
don't,
don't know that.
so the word, for example, utilize is not in my vocabulary. I don't utilize it, I use.
Right.
So there's certain words, there's no reason to try and glorify what you're trying to say even more. So I don't utilize my phone, I use it. And so I use
Yeah.
that word. And I've been told there's other words that are along those lines. Simple is, and I'm very simple-minded.
Yeah. No, I understand. I see like very long sentences which could be broken apart.
Yeah.
Right.
That's.
And I have put a writing style guide together for the department to use in classes, just like some common grammar mistakes and things like that and I tell starting with the sophomores, don't try to write fancy because it comes off that way of you trying to sound smart instead of just writing like we speak. And like nobody says utilized when we're talking, so.
And also absolute, as you mentioned that, because you just made a conclusion based on your data, so don't say this is absolute, so just based on your data, this is the result, so that's important. And I wanted that if you make it like, use any word like significant or that has some statistical meaning, so don't use those words unless you did those statistical analysis.
Right, and the Kent just shared with me from the geotech business something or professional organization, and they have a whole list of those absolutes, and I've added that, and I can make that available.
We can
to
make
you
it
guys.
available to the audience.
Yeah, I can share. It has they have all of those kinds of words that you don't use.
That will be helpful for, yeah, we will share with the audience.
Sure. Okay, any tips on how to make online presentations more engaging and impactful? Thank you for the wonderful presentation.
Thank you. I think what you can do is have maybe some surveys and things like that, so that student or that your audience can take while they're participating. Depending on if you're doing an hour-long presentation at a conference, I know I've attended like trainings that are 3 hours long, and then they break us out into groups and let us talk about what they've just presented. I think those are engaging ways to make a presentation. It's hard. It's hard, we're in the Zoom era and it's hard to make it more than a live audience, but yeah, those are my recommendations.
I think you should, try to avoid being monotone, and also folks can read you, if you show enthusiasm in your subject, even if you're, even if it's not interested to them, but if you don't show interest in your own subject, then they'll read that and you'll lose them.
Yeah.
And so I try to at least, show some, if I talk about something, I'm hopefully enthusiastic about it.
And increase engaging activities like survey in the middle, so as the audience to complete like a few questions and answers, and those we keep them
Right.
part. Yeah.
I like using, for example, I like using iClicker in lecture because, I think, okay, everybody's got this. And then I run the iClicker and I got 30% were right. I go, uh-oh, okay, well, maybe I didn't, get my point across as well. And so getting feedback it's a good thing if you could figure out a way to do that.
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah, my question is regarding how about, because I saw your presentation did not have any animation or something, so how about using of animation?
Yes, that would be great. I recommended that people do it. I avoid it because it causes me anxiety because it always messes up when I have technology. And so I avoid it because it causes my anxiety to go up when I'm presenting, but absolutely.
That's very good point. If you're showing video or animation, make you practice, because it can throw you off.
And I will practice and it never fails. It doesn't work. And now my anxiety is so high and I've got to speak and I'm like, I got to get myself calmed down before I go out here. So yes,
I'm definitely fine with that, but I'm not fine with the funky PowerPoint animation that slide flies and bubbles up.
Yes, you don't want to be overdoing.
So but simulation animation and things like that, I'm into cartoons, I'm very, young kind of, and so being able to show simulations and stuff, it is engaging, it can be very engaging, especially if it has a purpose.
Right, context is key. Did you have?
Oh, so my question is, Dr. Sarah said to not be monotone. That's something I have learned from the presenter from your class, and sir, they interact by throwing sometimes some joke, even if it's like the serious content we talk about. I feel sometimes like the professor, if you present in very monotone, it's like always X, Y, Z and stuff like that, it become very serious, so you don't get it. You just slip, but sometimes you interact with us by throwing some inside jokes, and that just keep you interacting with him in the class and keep you very engaged in the classroom.
So who's funnier?
What's funnier? I will go with him. I'm not being biased.
Why is this?
No, I like
change.
Let me tell you why I say he's funnier, because he got the seriousness while he told jokes that you don't know if he's joking or no. So to me, that's being funny. That's how I get, yes.
You are the more, so Dr. Khan said, Abdul Khan, you're silly, I'm funny. So.
I'll just ignore all that. I'm just gonna go back and play on my phone.
That was great. Any others? Well, thank you all. I really appreciate the opportunity to talk with you, and I hope that was useful.
So you mentioned that